It started with a smile I didn't know how to answer. We just wrapped up our third college semester. Midterms were over. The campus was exhaling, and I was looking forward to a quiet winter break where I could reset my brain, maybe game in peace, and sleep without the guilt of assignments looming. But then came Tyler. Tyler wasn't new. In fact, he had been around since our first year, just always adjacent. We had mutual friends, sat in a couple classes together, and even ended up in the same dorm building last year. But he was the kind of guy you notice without fully noticing. Funny, quick-witted, maybe too confident for his own good, and effortlessly social. The kind of guy who made people lean in without realizing they were doing it. He wasn't in my direct circle. We shared air, not space. That changed the night of the game night. It was one of those spontaneous Friday events where everyone showed up with snacks and bad moods from finals. I came mostly for the pizza. I didn't expect to get roped into a chaotic group game of Mafia, nor did I expect to be sitting across from Tyler, who kept smirking every time I accused someone, like he already knew what was going to happen. I tried not to look directly at him too long. Something about his gaze felt too observant, like he wasn't just playing a game, like he was watching me. At one point, he leaned across the table, eyes locked on mine, and said, "You've got a terrible poker face." I laughed nervously. "So I've been told." He tilted his head, grin softening. "You always get to squint right here when you lie." I blinked. "You've been studying me?" "Maybe." Just like that, my entire spine turned to static. It wasn't the words. It was the way he said them. Like it was nothing, like he flirted like this all the time. Like I should have expected it. But I didn't know how to respond. So I just smiled back and let the next round start. After that night, something shifted. He started showing up more. Not just at mutual gatherings, but specifically around me. He'd sit next to me during lecture, even if there were a dozen empty seats. He started asking what I was doing after class. One time, I found him waiting outside the library with 2 coffees, saying, "Thought you could use some motivation." I didn't know how to read it. I'd spent so much of my life learning how to avoid assuming things, how not to get my hopes up, that my brain refused to process what was plainly happening. And the flirting got weirder, subtler, but bolder at the same time. He'd send me memes that felt a little too specific. One of them was a guy staring at another guy with a caption, "When your best friend looks like that and expects you to act normal." I replied with a laughing emoji. He responded with, "Just saying." Another time, he walked into my dorm room without knocking. He'd gotten comfortable with that somehow and plopped down on my bed. I said, "You're invading my personal space." He smiled, hands behind his head. "I like your space." That one stuck with me for days. I wanted to believe it, but I also didn't want to embarrass myself. The worst kind of awkward was assuming someone liked you when they were just being friendly. And with Tyler, it was impossible to tell where his charm ended and sincerity began. Then came the day everything started to unravel, or maybe come together. We were in the student lounge, playing Super Smash Brothers, surrounded by noise and snacks and half-shouted insults from other players. It was stupid fun. He and I were on the same team, and we kept winning, barely. Every time we won a round, he'd high-five me, which somehow morphed into shoulder bumps, and then casual touches that lingered a second too long. But the last round, something happened. We lost. Badly. I groaned and tossed my controller. "That was your fault." He laughed. "My fault? You jumped off the platform like an amateur." "Yeah, because you distracted me." "With what?" I turned to answer, but he was close. Closer than I expected. And then, without thinking, he leaned in and said, just barely loud enough for me to hear, "You really have no idea how distracting you are, do you?" I froze. My heart hit my ribs like a mallet. I didn't say anything. I didn't know how. And just like that, he stood up, stretched casually, and said, "I'm grabbing a soda. You want one?" Like nothing had happened. I sat there for a full minute after he walked off, staring at the screen. Did that just happen? Was that real? Or was this just another perfectly timed, playful comment from someone who thrived on reactions? Later that night, after everyone had left and the energy had died down, I found myself alone in my room, staring at our text thread. I typed and deleted 5 different messages. I wanted to ask. I wanted to say something like, "Hey, what we doing?" Or, "Are you just messing with me?" But I couldn't, because if I was wrong, I'd never recover from the humiliation. Instead, I just typed, "Had fun tonight. You're annoying but decent." He replied instantly. High praise, coming from you. Then a second message. "You still thinking about that moment after the match?" My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. And then, because I am, that was it. No emojis, no sarcasm, no out, just raw, open honesty tucked inside a single sentence. I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. Instead, I sat there, letting the weight of those 5 words fill the room, like a spark waiting to catch. And that's when I realized this wasn't just awkward flirting. This was something else. Something I wasn't sure I was ready for, but something I definitely couldn't ignore. I didn't sleep much that night, not because of stress, but because every time I closed my eyes, I replayed that text. "You still thinking about that moment after the match?" Because I am. I stared at those 2 sentences like they might rearrange themselves into something safer. Something that didn't carry the weight they did. But they didn't. They just sat there, silent and exposed, waiting for me to decide what to do next. I typed a dozen replies in my head before finally settling on one. I hit send before I could overthink it again. Maybe I am too. The moment the little delivered check mark appeared, my stomach flipped. A part of me wanted to throw my phone across the room. Another part wanted him to reply right away so I could finally breathe. He didn't. At least, not for a while. I sat there staring at my screen like it might cough up an answer if I looked hard enough. But it stayed quiet. 10 minutes. 20. I set the phone down, walked to the window, tried to focus on the quiet campus at night. The snow outside glowed faintly under the orange streetlights. Everything looked soft, still, like the world had paused. And that's when my phone buzzed. I turned so fast, I almost tripped on my own rug. His reply just said, "Want to talk?" I didn't reply with words. I just sent a thumbs up and unlocked the door to my dorm. 5 minutes later, he knocked, and there he was, hood up, jacket half zipped, eyes unreadable. I stepped aside to let him in. He didn't say anything at first. Neither did I. He stood by the door while I sat on the edge of my bed. The silence felt loud but not uncomfortable, just full. He pulled off his jacket, hesitated, then sat down next to me. Close, but not too close. You didn't freak out, he said finally. I thought about it. He smiled, just barely. I thought you might. I looked over at him. Tyler, what is this? He didn't answer right away. He rubbed his palms against his jeans, took a slow breath, then said, "It's not a game, if that's what you're wondering." I blinked. I wasn't sure. I know. That's my fault. I mess around too much. People assume I don't mean things even when I do. He paused. But I meant what I said earlier. I can't stop thinking about you. And not just today. It's been a while. He looked down, fingers fidgeting. I'd never seen him like that. Unsteady. I didn't say anything because I didn't know if he'd be okay with it. Or if I was even reading things right. Maybe I still don't. But I didn't want to keep pretending we were just friends when clearly something's there. My heart felt like it was climbing a ladder with no top in sight. I didn't know how to read you either. I admitted. I didn't want to be the one who guessed wrong. He gave me a look that felt like it could stop time. You didn't guess wrong. We sat there for another few moments, just looking at each other. And then, carefully, he reached out and placed his hand on top of mine. I didn't pull away. His palm was warm. My hand shook slightly, but I didn't move. "I'm not trying to make this weird," he said softly. I think about you all the time. And I don't know what to do with that anymore." I could feel the vulnerability in his voice, the hesitation. This wasn't one of his usual smooth lines. This wasn't casual. It wasn't even just flirtation. It was something rawer, something real. "You're not making it weird," I said. He looked up. "No." I shook my head. Then, after a moment, I added, I think about you too. There was silence again, but this time it was different. Softer, like a question that had finally been answered. He smiled. Not that smug grin he usually wore, but a smaller, more genuine one. And then, slowly, he leaned his shoulder into mine, our arms touching from wrist to elbow. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was quiet, natural, and somehow it felt bigger than anything else he could have done. I didn't plan this, he said. Me neither, but I don't want to stop it either. Then don't. We sat like that until nearly 2 a.m., legs stretched out, backs against the wall, hands loosely entwined. He told me about how he'd figure out he liked guys but never really told anyone, how he always figured if the right moment came along, he'd know. I told him I'd been out for a while, at least to my close friends, but that I'd gotten good at pretending things didn't sting when people made jokes or changed the subject when I brought up dating. He didn't say much to that. He just held my hand tighter. Eventually, I walked him to the door. He looked at me for a long second, then whispered, I don't know what we're doing yet, but I want to find out. Me too. He gave me a small nod, turned, and walked down the hall. As soon as the door closed, I leaned my back against it and just breathed. Not everything was fixed. We hadn't defined anything. There was no label yet, no title, but there was something real growing in the space between us. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of it. I was curious. I was open. I was ready. We didn't talk the next day. Not out of awkwardness or fear. More like a mutual, silent agreement to let the dust settle. The kind of quiet you slip into when something meaningful has just happened, and you're afraid that talking too soon might break it. But even in the silence, he found a way to reach me. Late that afternoon, I opened my door to find a note taped to it. No envelope. Just my name written in black Sharpie, all caps, underlined twice. Inside was a single sentence. Movie night? Same rules. You pick. I bring snacks. That was the thing about Tyler. He never acted like he was rushing toward anything, but he also never let you feel like he was pulling away. He knew how to stay close without crowding you, and somehow that made me feel safe. Like he wasn't just experimenting with me. Like he actually cared about what came next. So yeah, I texted back. Deal. But if you bring gummy worms again, we're fighting. His reply came almost instantly. Bold talk for someone who let me win at Smash. That night, he showed up exactly at 8:03, wearing sweatpants and a hoodie that looked 2 sizes too big. His arms were full. Chips, a bag of popcorn that was still hot, 2 drinks, and, yes, gummy worms. I brought a peace offering, he said, holding out the snacks like a sacrificial gift. I let him in without saying anything, just smiled and shook my head. He dropped everything onto my bed, then looked at me. So what are we watching? I handed him the remote. Your turn. He squinted at me suspiciously. You're being too nice. That's suspicious. Just pick something before I change my mind. He picked some indie film that neither of us really paid attention to. The volume was too low, the subtitles were too fast, and halfway through, he turned to me and said, This is trash. I laughed. You picked it. Under duress. He flopped back onto the bed and stretched his legs out, so they brushed against mine. Not an accident. Not anymore. I didn't move away. At one point, he tossed a gummy worm into the air and missed his mouth completely. It bounced off his cheek and hit the floor. I couldn't stop laughing. He looked at me like I had just betrayed him. You're going to laugh at my darkest moment? He said. I'm going to remember it forever. I hate you. No, you don't. He smiled, and that smile lasted just a second too long. When the movie finally ended, neither of us moved. The only light in the room was the soft blue glow of the screen. He shifted a little, his shoulder brushing mine. I turned to look at him, and found him already looking at me. It wasn't intense. It wasn't dramatic. Just full of something quiet and unspoken. You're hard to figure out, I said. He raised an eyebrow. I thought you were the mysterious one. You hide behind jokes. You hide behind silence. We stared at each other again, and this time it wasn't just staring. He leaned in, slowly, like he was waiting for any sign stop. I didn't give him one. Our lips touched, just barely. It was tentative, careful, the kind of kiss that asks a question instead of making a statement. When we pulled back, he looked at me with wide eyes. Okay, wow. I could barely hear my own voice. Yeah. He sat back, ran a hand through his hair, then looked at me again. You okay? I nodded. Are you? He laughed under his breath. I don't think I've been this nervous since I failed my driver's test. We both laughed, and somehow that made everything less scary. He didn't kiss me again that night. We didn't cuddle. We didn't hold hands. We just kept watching dumb videos until we were both too tired to stay awake. And when he left, he gave me this look, like he wanted to say more, but didn't know how. And maybe I wasn't ready to hear it yet. But the next day, things were different. Not bad, not awkward, just different. He texted me more, checked in randomly, walked with me to class even when it made him late for his own. And then, halfway through the week, we hit our first glitch. Literally. We were in the dining hall when a couple of our mutual friends joined our table. Everything was fine. Normal banter, food complaints, weekend plans. Until one of them said, "You guys spend a lot of time together now, huh?" The way he said it wasn't mean, but it wasn't innocent either. Tyler froze, just for a second, but I felt it. He gave one of his usual laughs, that easygoing chuckle that deflected like a shield. What can I say? I'm charming. Everyone laughed, including me, but it hit me like a slap, because in that moment, I saw something I didn't want to see. Hesitation. The same kind I'd felt in myself before. The same fear of being exposed, misinterpreted, or worse, outed before you're ready. We didn't talk about it until that night. He texted, "Hey, want to talk?" I replied, "Yeah, come over." He showed up quieter than usual. Hoodie up, no snacks, just him. He sat on the edge of my bed, hands clasped. "I'm sorry if I acted weird earlier," he said. "You didn't act weird. You protected yourself." He nodded. Still, I hated how fast it happened. Like, I didn't even think. I just defaulted to the joke. "It's okay." "No, it's not. Not really." He looked at me, frustration flickering in his eyes. "I want to be able to just be myself. With you, in front of people. But I don't know how yet. It's not that I'm ashamed. I'm just scared." I reached over and took his hand. "Then be scared," I said. "But don't disappear." His fingers tightened around mine. "I won't." That night, there were no kisses, no games, just him lying next to me, both of us staring at the ceiling. We didn't need anything more, just a presence, the quiet, and the understanding that we were building something real. And real things take time. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know how long it would take for him to feel safe in the open. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going anywhere. I should have seen it coming. That moment when comfort becomes confusion again. When what felt safe and private suddenly feels exposed under the wrong kind of light. It wasn't dramatic. Not at first. Just a shift. A moment. A glance that lasted too long in a place it shouldn't have. It was a student union cafe. Friday afternoon. Crowded. Loud. Tyler and I had fallen into a rhythm. Study together. Joke around. Share playlists. Exchange glances that said more than we were ready to admit out loud. We had a table near the back. His leg brushing mine under the table like it always did. I was helping him with psych notes he hadn't bothered to read all semester. He kept making excuses about being a hands-on learner, which I knew was code for, "I want to make you laugh, so you won't realize I'm totally lost." We were mid-lecture breakdown when he reached over to take my pen, fingers brushing mine, and didn't pull his hand away right away. His eyes lingered on mine, soft, curious. "You always look at me like that when I talk about neurons," he teased. I rolled my eyes. "I'm just amazed you know what neurons are." He laughed, head tilting back a little. It was too easy to fall into that moment. Too easy to let my knee press a little firmer into his. Too easy to smile a little longer than necessary. Too easy to forget we weren't alone. Until I felt it. The stare. Someone across the room. watching us. Not just watching, whispering. I glanced over Tyler's shoulder and saw a group of guys near the window, two of whom I vaguely recognized from one of his elective classes. One of them leaned in, said something to the other, and both of them laughed. Tyler noticed. His whole body stiffened. In an instant, his hand pulled away. He sat back, legs apart, arms folded, like we'd just been caught doing something wrong. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I just watched him shift, watched the open, warm, comfortable Tyler retreat behind a new version of himself, one I hadn't seen in a while. He cleared his throat, forced a casual laugh. You gonna quiz me on dopamine next, or is this where I pretend I studied? I tried to respond, tried to match his tone, but I couldn't fake it as well as he could. You okay? I asked softly. Yeah, just remembered I've got a meeting in, 15. He stood too fast, nearly knocked over his drink. Tyler, I'll catch you later, all right? He didn't wait for me to answer, just gave me a tight smile, turned and walked out. I watched his hoodie disappear into crowd, then stared down at the half-finished notes, the smudge of my handwriting still fresh. He was gone, and I was left holding the space he'd just made uncomfortable. That night he didn't text. The next morning, still nothing. By Sunday, I gave up waiting and just showed up. His dorm door was half open, music playing low inside. I knocked once and walked in. He was lying on his bed, one arm over his eyes, hoodie up even indoors. I sat in his desk chair and waited. He didn't move. After a long silence, I said, You just go pretend nothing happened? He pulled his arm away, looked at me and sighed. I didn't mean to bolt like that. You think I care about that? I care that you shut me out. Again. I didn't mean to, but you did. He sat up slowly, feet hitting the floor, hands clasped between his knees. They were watching us. I know. They were laughing. I know that too. I panicked. You think I didn't notice? He flinched a little, but didn't look away. I'm not mad that you felt scared, Tyler. I get that. Believe me, I do. But when you react like that, it makes me feel like you're ashamed of being seen with me. His eyes shot up. I'm not. I swear I'm not. Then why did you run? He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, barely above a whisper, because it felt real. I blinked. What? That moment, with you, it felt real. And for the first time, I realized other people could see it too. And that scared the hell out of me. He looked up at me, his eyes glassy. You don't get it. You've already figured yourself out. You're okay with who you are. I'm still trying. I don't even know what this is yet. I've never been like this with anyone. And suddenly I'm falling for someone, and I don't know how to handle it. The room felt heavier than I expected. I stood, walked over, and sat beside him on the edge of the bed. You don't have to figure it all out tonight, I said. But you don't get to disappear every time it gets real. He nodded, slow. I don't want to keep screwing this up. Then don't. He reached out, gently brushed his fingers against mine. I'm scared. I am too. He turned toward me. But I don't want to keep hiding. Then we don't have to. I don't know how to do this. Then we figure out together. The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was full of something else. Something almost like peace. Or maybe surrender. The good kind. The kind that comes when you finally stop pretending. He looked at me, soft and unsure, and asked, You staying? I nodded. I'm not going anywhere. And I meant it, even if it was awkward, even if it was messy, even if we stumbled through it with more fear than grace. Because something about this, about him, was worth it, even when it hurt, especially then. The thing about real change is it never announces itself. It just happens in the middle of a moment you thought would be like any other. You go from silence to conversation, from glances to touches, and somewhere in the middle, the line between casual and serious disappears. I started noticing it in the little things. How Tyler no longer hesitated to text first. How he lingered in doorways a second longer when leaving. How sometimes he'd look at me like I was the only stable thing in a world he was still learning how to navigate. And still, We hadn't put a label on anything. Neither of us asked. Neither of us pushed. But the space between us was filling up with something neither of us could explain away anymore. That's why what happened next hit me so hard. It was a Thursday. Cold. Overcast. The kind of day that makes you wish you could just disappear into your hoodie and let the world pass. Tyler and I had made vague plans to meet at the campus rec room. He wanted to shoot pool. I just wanted to be around him. I got there first. He was late, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was seeing him walk in with someone else. Some guy I didn't recognize. Taller than him. Clean cut. Wearing a varsity jacket that screamed soccer team. Tyler was laughing at something the guy said. The way he touched Tyler's arm when they talked. It was casual but familiar. And when their eyes locked across the room and Tyler hesitated, my chest tightened. He didn't come over right away. Instead, he gestured like he'd be just a second and leaned in to say something to the guy. Whatever it was, it made the guy laugh again. And then they bumped fists and the guy walked off. Tyler finally approached, hands stuffed in his pockets. "Hey," he said. I stared at him. "Who was that?" He scratched the back of his neck. That's Connor. We had a group project last semester. Ran into him just now. Seemed friendly." Tyler's mouth twitched. "He's nice." I didn't push. Not then. But the next hour felt different. He was quieter, less playful. He kept checking his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. And whatever game we were playing, neither of us really tried. It was like someone had sucked the gravity out of the room and left us both floating in discomfort. After we finished the last round, I grabbed my backpack. "You okay?" he asked. "Fine," I said, which wasn't true. "You sure?" I looked at him, searching for something, an explanation, maybe even an apology, but he just stood there uncertain, like even he didn't know what he was doing. So I left. That night, he texted. Just one message. "I feel like I messed something up." I stared at it for 10 minutes before replying. "Maybe you did." The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, reappeared, then another message. "Can I come over?" I didn't answer. But 5 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. I opened it. He didn't wait for permission. He just walked in, sat on the edge of my bed, and said, "Okay, be mad. I deserve it." I closed the door slowly. "I'm not mad because you talked to someone," I said. "I'm mad because you saw how that made me feel and still pretended like it was nothing." He sighed. "Connor doesn't mean anything. Didn't look like that from across the room. He was just being friendly. And you liked it." That made him pause. He looked at me, pain etched behind his usual calm. "I don't know what I liked. Okay? I'm still figuring it out. Sometimes I forget how different this is. With you." I sat down next to him. "Different how?" "I feel exposed," he said quietly. "When I'm with you, it's like people can see through me. And sometimes that's amazing. But sometimes it's terrifying." We sat there in silence again. I hated that he was struggling. I hated that I couldn't just flip a switch and make him feel secure. But I also knew this wasn't just about one moment or one guy. This was about fear. About what happens when something real meets a world that doesn't always make room for it. "I like you," I said finally. "I think you know that." He nodded. "I do. But I'm not going to compete. Not with other people. And not with your own fear." He looked up, suddenly desperate. "I'm not asking you to." "Then what are you asking?" He looked down again, his fingers twisting in the fabric of his hoodie. "I'm asking you to be patient. I'm trying. I promise I am." I didn't say anything, because I believe him, even if it still hurt. He reached over, touched my hand. "I didn't mean to make you feel small." "You didn't?" I said, even though part of me knew he kind of had. "You just made me feel like I didn't matter." "That's worse," he whispered. "And it's not true." He leaned forward, eyes locking with mine. "You're the only one that does." I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I didn't. I just nodded, squeezed his hand, and let him stay. We didn't talk much after that. Just laid there, side by side, until sleep took over. The next day, something changed again, but this time, in a way I wasn't expecting. We were walking across campus when Tyler reached for my hand. In public, out in the open. I looked at him, startled. He was already looking at me. "I'm done hiding," he said. "Even if I mess up sometimes. Even if I'm scared. I'm done pretending this isn't real." And just like that, I realized something else. I wasn't scared anymore either. There's something strange about holding someone's hand in public, when just days ago, they wouldn't even look you in the eye after a brush of knees in private. It should feel simple, but it doesn't. It feels loaded, brave, like a quiet revolution disguised as skin on skin. Tyler's fingers were laced with mine as we walked through campus. The sun was starting to dip, casting long shadows across the brick pathways. Students passed us without giving a second look, most of them too busy with their own worlds. But even in the calm, my heart beat louder than it should have. Not from fear anymore, but from realization. This was real. This was happening. And it wasn't just mine now, it was ours. He hadn't let go since he took my hand. Not when we passed the fountain. Not when his coach walked by. Not even when we passed a group of students he used to hang out with. They looked, maybe even whispered, but he didn't flinch. His thumb even traced the back of my hand once. Just briefly, like a quiet reminder. Later that evening, we ended up back at my room. We didn't say much for a while. We just sat on the bed, sharing headphones, swapping favorite tracks. It was peaceful, safe, until he paused the music mid-song and pulled the earbud from his ear. "There's something I should tell you," he said. His voice didn't waver, but something in his eyes did. I shifted to face him. "Okay." He looked down, then back up again. "I've never said this out loud, not even to myself. But if we're doing this, whatever this is, I don't want to hide anymore." My chest tightened. "Tyler, whatever it is, you can say it." He exhaled slowly. "Back in high school, I got close to someone. A guy. We weren't out. Not even close. He had a girlfriend. I had a persona. We were just two kids pretending we weren't something we clearly were." He swallowed hard. "One night we kissed. Just once. I thought it meant something. But the next day, he denied everything. He told people I came on to him. Made a joke. People started looking at me different. Whispers in the locker room. Glances I couldn't explain. It didn't blow up or anything, but it changed how I moved in the world." He paused, and for a moment, I saw a version of him that felt years younger. Raw. Fragile. I didn't talk to anyone about it. Not my friends. Not my brother. I just buried it. Laughed louder. Flirted harder. Acted like it never happened. And eventually, it stopped feeling real. Until my voice was barely above a whisper. "You don't have to hide from me. I know, but I needed you to know why I pull back sometimes. Why I act like I'm still deciding. I'm not. I'm just scared of being that vulnerable again." I reached out, placing my hand over his. "You're not that kid anymore, and I'm not going anywhere." He didn't cry, but his silence said everything. That night we didn't kiss. We didn't cuddle. We just laid there, face to face, holding on like the world might shift beneath us again. And maybe it would, but in that moment, we were still. The next morning, everything felt lighter. We got coffee, sat under the same tree we always used to pass without noticing. He made dumb jokes about squirrels. I rolled my eyes, pretending not to smile. It felt easy again, until his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, then cursed under his breath. "What's wrong?" I asked. He held it up. "It's my mom. I forgot I was supposed to go home this weekend." "You want to go?" He hesitated. "Wanna?" "Not really, but I probably should. She'll worry if I bail again." I nodded. "You should go." He looked disappointed. "I'll be back Sunday night." "You don't owe me an apology." "Still feels like I do." He leaned over and kissed my cheek. Quick, soft, full of unspoken promises. "I'll call you tonight," he said, then grabbed his bag and jogged off toward the dorms. As I watched him disappear into the distance, something in my chest tightened. Not in a bad way, just a tug. A reminder that sometimes, when you care about someone, the quiet moments are the ones that matter most. That night, he didn't call. Not for hours. And when my phone finally buzzed close to midnight, it wasn't a call. It was a photo A selfie of him and a little girl, maybe 5 or 6, curly hair, gap-toothed smile. His niece, I assumed. Caption, told her about you. She says hi. My heart skipped. I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. She has your eyes. He replied instantly. And your smile. I didn't know what we were yet. Not exactly. But I knew what we weren't anymore. We weren't pretending. We weren't guessing. And we weren't afraid to be seen. Tyler came back Sunday night, just like he said he would. But he didn't come straight to my room. I waited. Every creak in the hallway outside made me glance at the door. Every passing voice made my heart leap, and then drop. By 10:30, I'd almost convinced myself I was overthinking it, that maybe he was just tired or wanted a shower or time to reset. But then there was a knock. 3 short, soft taps. And something about the rhythm told me it was him. I opened the door, and there he was, backpack slung over one shoulder, hoodie half-zipped, eyes a little more tired than usual. "Hey," he said. "Hey." He stepped inside and dropped his bag with a thud. Then he turned to face me, but he didn't close the door. He stood there, awkward, shifting from one foot to the other. "I need to talk to you," he said. That's when I knew. It wasn't just tiredness in his eyes. It was something heavier. The kind of weight that sits on your chest before you even know what it's made of. I nodded and sat down on the edge of the bed. He stayed standing. "So," he started, "when I was home, things got kind of weird." "Weird how?" He scratched the back of his neck and looked down at the floor. "I was hanging out with my brother, and we were just talking, catching up, nothing serious. And then he just asked me straight up, like, 'Is there something going on with you and that guy you keep texting?' My stomach dropped. 'You mean me?' 'Yeah.' I waited for him to continue, afraid of what would come next. I didn't answer right away. I think he could see it in my face. But instead of flipping out or getting weird, he just said, 'Whatever it is, you seem happier than you've been in a long time.' I blinked. He said that. Tyler nodded slowly. I think he already knew. Maybe not the full picture, but enough. And then my mom came in, and we all had dinner, and it was fine. Really fine. Like, for the first time, I wasn't pretending to be someone else. A small smile touched my lips, but I didn't say anything yet. Tyler moved to sit beside me, but he didn't look at me right away. "There's more," he said quietly. I felt the shift in his tone. The good part had passed. Now came the rest. He took a breath. My mom mentioned this job thing. Apparently, one of her friends owns a media studio downtown and is looking for interns for the summer. She said she'd already talked to them, and they're willing to hold a spot if I'm interested. I felt the tension return. "In the city?" He nodded. "For the whole summer?" "Yeah. Full time. Paid." I swallowed hard. "And are you thinking about it?" He looked at me then, really looked at me. That's the thing. I wasn't. I didn't even care. But then my brother said something that messed with my head. What did he say? He said, "Don't build your whole world around one person unless you know for sure they're doing the same." That hit like a punch to the chest. Tyler must have seen it in my face, because he immediately grabbed my hand. "I'm not saying he's right," he said, "but it got me thinking. About us. About what this is. And what happens when summer comes. When things aren't as easy as meeting after class or grabbing late-night coffee. I never asked you to stay." I said, maybe a little too sharply. "I know," he said, "but part of me wants to. That's the problem." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to be selfish. I wanted to tell him to stay, to turn down the offer, to choose me without hesitation. But I couldn't do that. Not if I really cared about him. "You should go," I said finally. His eyes widened. "What?" "You should take the internship. You've worked hard. You deserve it." He stared at me like I just said the last thing he expected. "But what about us?" he asked. I reached up and touched his face, gently brushing his cheek with my thumb. "If this is real, it won't disappear just because we're in different zip codes." He leaned into my touch, eyes closing briefly. "I don't want to lose this," he whispered. "Then we don't." We sat there in silence again, hands tangled together, hearts beating too loud in the quiet. Eventually, he laid his head in my lap, and I ran my fingers through his hair. It was the most intimate thing we'd done so far, quiet and full of something deeper than a kiss. "I'm scared," he admitted softly. "So am I. But maybe that's how I know it matters." I didn't say anything, just kept stroking his hair, grounding him the best way I knew how. The rest of the night passed in a kind of hazy peace. No drama, no tension, just the kind of presence you only get with someone who's starting to become part of you. And when he finally fell asleep with his hand still gripping mine, I knew something I hadn't known before. I loved him, not in the storybook, firework kind of way, in the quiet, steady, terrifying kind of way. The kind that changes everything, even if it means letting go. The day Tyler was supposed to leave came faster than I expected. I'd been counting down the days, pretending not to, like maybe if I didn't acknowledge it, time would stretch itself out, give us more moments. But time doesn't do favors. It moves the way it always does, forward, unapologetic. He was leaving for the city, for the internship, for 3 months. We spent the night before my room. No plans, no pressure. Just us. We ordered terrible pizza, watched half of a movie we'd both seen a dozen times, and talked about everything but the next day. That was the unspoken rule. Don't talk about the goodbye. Don't make it real yet. But even in silence, it hung between us like a fog we couldn't clear. Tyler had his head resting on my chest, fingers playing with the hem of my shirt. His breathing was steady, calm, but I could tell his mind was racing. "You know," he said after a long pause, "I never expected this." "Expected what?" "You. Us." I smiled, even though it hurt. "Yeah, me either. I thought I'd just float through college. Keep my head down. Date girls I didn't feel anything for. Graduate. Move on. That sounds miserable." It was a plan. Bad plan. He laughed, but it was soft. "Tired. You ruined it." "You're welcome." We laid there a while longer, our legs tangled, our hearts saying things our mouths couldn't. Then he sat up slowly, pulling away like it physically hurt him. I should get some sleep. Early train. I nodded, pretending I hadn't already memorized every detail of his face. He hesitated at the door, like there was something he wanted to say but couldn't. "Tyler," I said before he turned the knob, "don't disappear, okay?" He looked back at me, something raw and vulnerable flickering in his eyes. "I won't." But he didn't say goodbye, and that was somehow worse. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I don't know why, some internal alarm. Maybe. My room was too quiet, the bed too cold. I checked my phone, half hoping for a message. Nothing. I stared at the ceiling for a while, letting the ache settle in. Then, just as I was about to bury my face in the pillow and shut the world out, my phone buzzed. One message. "Meet me on the quad. Now." No punctuation. No explanation. Just that. I didn't hesitate. I pulled on the nearest hoodie, slipped into my shoes, and sprinted out the door. The quad was mostly empty. Morning light cut through the trees in golden slants. Birds chirped like they didn't know someone's world was shifting. And then I saw him, Tyler, standing in the middle of the grass. Backpack on, hoodie half zipped. Same as last night, same as always. Except something in his expression had changed. I slowed as I reached him, heart hammering. "You didn't leave." He shook his head. "I couldn't. Not without this." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small notebook. It looked worn, like it had been shoved into too many bags and sat on too many desks. He handed it to me. "What is this?" "Open it." I did. Inside were pages of messy writing, doodles in the margins, half-sentences, crossed-out lyrics, random thoughts. But one page near the middle made me stop. It was dated a few weeks ago. He doesn't know I watch him when he laughs. Like, really laughs. It makes me feel like maybe I could be something better if I stayed near him. My throat tightened. I flipped to another page. He looked at me like I mattered today. I think that's the scariest feeling I've ever had. And another, if I told him I loved him, would he believe me? Would I? My hands trembled. I looked up at Tyler. You wrote all of this? He nodded. I didn't know how to say any of it out loud. So I wrote it down. For me, for you, for us, I guess. I couldn't speak. So he did. I'm still going. I need to, for me, to grow, to figure stuff out. But I didn't want to leave without you knowing how I actually feel. He stepped closer. I love you, he said simply. No build-up, no drama, just truth. I stared at him, heart ready to explode. Say it again. He smiled. I love you. I dropped the notebook and pulled him into me, arms tight around his back, face buried in his shoulder. I love you too, I whispered. We stood there in the quiet morning light, holding on to each other like the rest of the world didn't exist. Eventually, he pulled back. I gotta go. I nodded, wiping at my eyes. Don't miss your train. He kissed me. Not rushed, not desperate, just full of everything neither of us had the courage to say until now. Then he walked away. This time, it didn't feel like the end. It felt like the beginning of something bigger than both of us. Something worth waiting for. Long distance wasn't something either of us planned for. We never sat down and agreed on how often we'd talk, or what we'd say, or even if we were officially together. But love doesn't need a formal label to ache when someone's not close. And missing someone, really missing them, has a way of showing up in places you don't expect, like the silence between texts, the long pauses on a video call, when you can't find the right words, the ache in your chest when a song you both like comes on, and you suddenly realize you're alone. At first, it was good. We'd text constantly, send voice notes, even fall asleep on calls while pretending to be watching the same show. Tyler would tell me about the studio, how weird the office coffee tasted, how one of his supervisors played a guitar at lunch, how the editing room smelled like metal and dust, but felt like home. I'd tell him about campus, about how nothing really changed, and yet everything felt different now. I'd gone back to old routines, same classrooms, same people. But now they all exist in the shadow of someone who wasn't here. 2 weeks in, things started to shift. Not dramatically, not all at once, but it was there. Missed calls, late replies, short answers. One night I called him 3 times. No answer. The next morning I got a single message. Sorry, super busy. Talk soon. I didn't respond. I didn't know how, because I didn't want to be the clingy one, the insecure one, the person who asks, "Are we okay?" when they already know the answer might sting. The next evening, just after midnight, my phone buzzed. Not a text, a call. I picked up immediately. Tyler? He sounded breathless, like he'd been running. I'm sorry, he said. I know I've been distant. I didn't want to call you like this. Like what? He was silent for a moment. Then, can you just talk to me? Please? I just need to hear your voice. So I did. I talked about nothing and everything. What I'd eaten. A weird TikTok I saw. The way our RA tripped over a recycling bin and pretended nothing happened. Anything to keep the silence from swallowing him whole. Eventually, he interrupted me. I almost quit today, he said. What? The internship. I walked out during lunch and nearly didn't come back. Why? He let out a shaky breath. Because I felt like I didn't belong. Like I was just this clueless guy pretending to care about lighting angles and audio balancing, while thinking about someone who was probably forgetting me already. I sat up in bed, the weight of his words pulling me forward. Tyler, I haven't forgotten you. I know, but it feels like I'm fading. Like whatever this was, it's getting harder to hold on to. I didn't say anything at first. Then, you're not fading. You're still here. Every time I put on my hoodie, and it smells like you, every time I sit under that tree where you kiss me, every time I close my eyes and hear you laughing in my head. He went quiet. You still with me? I asked. Yeah, he whispered, just trying not to cry. I miss you too, I said, finally letting the truth fall out. So much it hurts. After that, we didn't hang up. We just left the call open. I could hear him breathing, and I knew he could hear me. It was messy and silent and strange, but it felt right. Eventually, I heard him fall asleep. I didn't hang up. I just listened. The next day, he sent me a photo of his desk. On it was a notebook he'd given me, a sticky note on the cover that read, "Not fading, still here." I smiled so hard it hurt. For a while, things got better. He made time, even when it was hard. I stopped keeping score. We started sending each other clips of our day. Him walking through downtown, me sitting in the quad with the campus squirrels. It wasn't perfect, but it felt real again. Then came the storm. Not a metaphorical one. An actual storm. One night, his city got hit with one of the worst power outages in years. Streets were flooded, subways shut down, phone towers knocked out. I didn't hear from him for over 16 hours. I kept checking his socials. Nothing. I texted, called. Nothing. I went through every scenario in my head. Was he okay? Was he stuck? Was he alone? By the time I finally got a message, my hands were shaking. I'm okay. I'm safe. I'll call when I can. I promise. I stared at it for a long time, then typed, "Thank you." It wasn't until 3 a.m. that the call came. His voice was rough, like he'd been crying or yelling, or maybe just holding it all in. "I thought about you the whole time," he said. "I thought about you too." There was this moment, he said, when everything went dark, and I was just sitting in this office surrounded by silence, and I swear the only thing I could think about was your face. I closed my eyes, holding back the rush in my chest. I needed to hear that. I whispered, "You're my anchor," he said, "even when everything feels like it's falling apart." And just like that, I knew, even from a distance, even in silence, even through storms, he was still mine. I was halfway through a Thursday morning when everything changed again. I had just finished a lab, was walking back across campus with earbuds in, lost in a song Tyler had once sent me, when I saw him, standing by the vending machines outside the student union. Hood up, hands in pockets, like he belonged there, like he hadn't just spent the past month living in another city. My feet stopped, my breath hitched, and for a second, the world narrowed to just him. He looked up, saw me, smiled. I yanked my earbuds out and started walking fast, then jogging, then before I knew it, I was practically running. He opened his arms like it was the most natural thing in the world, like he'd been waiting for me to crash into him since the day he left. I didn't hold back. I wrapped my arms around him, buried my face in his shoulder, and let out a shaky breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for weeks. "You're here," I said, muffled into his hoodie. "I'm here," he said, squeezing tighter. Surprise? I pulled back just enough to look at him. "But what about the internship?" He smiled, but there was something heavy behind it. "That's kind of what I came to talk to you about." My heart sank. Did something happen? He nodded slowly. "Yeah, something big." We walked to the quad, our old spot, and sat under the tree. He sat cross-legged, picking at the grass, trying to find the words. After the storm, he said, they shut down part of the studio for repairs. A lot of the interns got reassigned or had hours cut. It got messy. I was barely working more than 10 hours a week. I stayed quiet listening. So I had time to think. And the more I thought, the more I realized I wasn't really happy. Not just because I missed you, which I did, but because I was chasing something I didn't even want. Not yet. He looked up at me. I took the internship because I thought I had to prove something, that I could be normal, professional, focused, but it just made me feel more lost. I let that sit for a moment. Then I asked a question I was scared to know the answer to. "So what now?" He looked me dead in the eye. "I came back to figure that out. With you." My heart jumped. He continued. "I'm not saying I gave up on everything. I just needed to step away and ask myself what actually matters. And this, us, kept being the only thing that felt real." I could feel tears building behind my eyes. "Do you even know how much I wanted to hear you say that?" He reached for my hand. "Then let me say something else too." I nodded, throat tight. "I want to be with you. For real, not in pieces. Not around work schedules or weather disasters. Just here, now, you and me." I blinked hard, trying to stay composed. "Okay," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Okay? Yeah, let's do this. He grinned, that perfect lopsided grin that had undone me more times than I could count. So what does that mean? He asked. It means, I said, scooting closer. You're mine now, and I'm yours. Officially. No more guessing. No more holding back. He leaned forward, pressing his forehead to mine. I missed this, he whispered. I missed you. And then he kissed me. Soft, unrushed, like we had all the time in the world, which, for the first time, it felt like we might. Later that night, we sat in my room again. The lights were low, music playing in the background. Tyler had his head in my lap, flipping through his notebook. You still writing? I asked. He nodded. Every day. Even when you weren't answering my texts. He winced, especially then. He handed me the notebook again. I flipped to the most recent page. There's a kind of peace that comes when you stop running. When you let someone see the parts of you even you don't understand. That's what it gives me. And maybe that's what love really is. I swallowed hard. Tyler. He looked up at me. Yeah. I think you're already more than you give yourself credit for. He smiled. That's because I've got someone who sees me. Really sees me. We didn't sleep much that night. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because when someone you love comes back after you thought you'd lost them, you don't waste time sleeping. You stay up. You talk. You laugh until your stomach hurts. You play songs and take blurry pictures and share secrets you thought you'd carry to your grave. And when the sun starts rising, painting the walls in gold, you hold each other a little tighter and whisper things like, "Don't go," even when you know they're not planning to. That's how it felt with Tyler. Like we were rewriting the ending we were once afraid to write at all. Together. The thing about beginnings is that they rarely feel like beginnings when they happen. Sometimes they feel like endings. Or like chaos. Or like two people avoiding eye contact in the back of a lecture hall. But looking back, it's easy to trace a thread. To see how one awkward moment can stretch into something whole. Something unexpected. Something worth every strange step it took to get there. It had been 3 weeks since Tyler came back. 3 quiet, warm, strangely normal weeks. We weren't rushing to define ourselves. We didn't announce anything. We just existed. Together. More honest than before. More careful with each other's hearts. He started spending nights again. Not every night. Just the ones that felt like they needed to end in silence and shared space. We'd lay there and talk about nothing, his hand finding mine under the covers. Sometimes we'd fall asleep like that. Sometimes we wouldn't sleep at all. Not because we were doing anything, just because being that close made sleep feel secondary. One night, we were lying in bed, side by side, when he turned to me and said, "Do you ever think about how weird this all is?" I glanced at him. Us. No, I mean, how close we came to missing this. All of it. Like, if I hadn't tripped that day, if I hadn't freaked out after that first almost kiss, if you just moved on. I turned onto my side to face him. I don't think I could have moved on. Not really. He smiled. You think you were that hooked? I think, I said, brushing a knuckle against his cheek, that I was already falling for you before I even knew it. He pulled me close, tucking his face into my shoulder. It's weird how safe you feel. Safe's good, I whispered. Safe's everything. We stayed like that, half asleep, half aware, the world outside the window fading into nothing. Finals came and went. Spring bloomed like it had been waiting for us to notice. Campus buzzed with post-exam chaos. People making summer plans, last-minute hookups. Goodbyes that felt too short and too light. Tyler. And I didn't talk about summer yet. Not because we were avoiding it, but because we were learning not to treat time like an enemy. If it came, it came. And if distance knocked on our door again, we'd open it together. But one afternoon, we found ourselves sitting under the same tree where everything changed. He had a popsicle in his mouth, purple-stained lips smirking as he read over my shoulder while I tried to study. You retain none of that, he teased. I would if someone wasn't breathing ice on my ear. He leaned in exaggeratedly close and whispered, "Photosynthesis." I laughed and shoved him, and he fell back on the grass dramatically, arms sprawled like a chalk outline. "You're ridiculous," I said. "I'm yours," he shot back. The words froze me, not because they scared me, but because they didn't. I looked at him, lying in the sunlight, cheeks pink from the heat, hair messy, eyes too full of everything we weren't brave enough to say most days. "Say it again," I whispered. He propped himself up on his elbows. "I'm yours." I nodded. "Yeah, you are." We stayed out there for hours, the world moving around us like background noise. At some point, he pulled out his notebook and handed it to me again. This time, there was a note tucked inside the cover. Not the end, just the beginning. I flipped through the pages, many of them filled now, and near the back, I found one that made me pause. There's nothing more terrifying than loving someone who sees every broken part of you and still stays. That's what he did. That's what he does. Every day. And maybe love isn't about certainty. Maybe it's just about choosing. Again and again. Even when it's hard. Especially then. I looked up. He was watching me. Quiet and calm. I handed the notebook back. "I think you're braver than you realize," I said. He smiled. "I think I just finally found something worth being brave for." And that was it. No grand confessions shouted into the wind. No viral videos or elaborate gestures. Just two people, sitting under a tree, sharing a silence that felt like a promise. Later, as the sun began to set and we made our way back to my room, he slipped his hand into mine like he always did. Not like it was new, not like it was delicate, but like it belonged there. When we reached the door, he paused and looked at me. "Remember the first time we stood right here?" he asked. I nodded. "You were a nervous wreck." "You were worse," he said, grinning. "You tripped over your own shoes." I did not. "You did. I just pretended not to see it." I laughed. "Why?" "Because I already liked you." He leaned and then, slow and sure, and kissed me. Not like it was the end of something, but like it was the middle of everything. And I kissed him back with everything I had. Because the truth is, love doesn't always arrive the way we expect. Sometimes it slips through awkward silences and flirty banter and stolen glances in a shared dorm. Sometimes it grows quietly between video calls and voice notes and late-night storms. And sometimes, if you're really lucky, it waits for you to be ready, then meets you right where you are. That's how I found Tyler. Or maybe that's how we found each other. In the mess, in the moments, in the middle of becoming something more. Together,